let's unpack the feeling of loneliness together. I've just been for an early morning walk and that just been so prominent. It just kept coming up and I've been thinking about it and contemplating and comparing what's been happening to myself over the years, how I've interpreted situations as being lonely, how I've been telling stories about loneliness, and what is actually real, and how did it shift, and so forth. So maybe you can play along with me a little bit and really feel into your own situation, your own story, your own body, right? Because this is a prominent feeling, or often discussed at this time of the year. You know, at the time of recording this video, I think it's the 26th of November, right, leading to its Christmas, the end of the year. This comes up really strong for people around this time, right? People do a lot of thinking about family, and that sense of not belonging, not fitting in comes up, right? And then we also reflect and we feel like, oh, I didn't accomplish anything in this year compared to such and such, and oh, we do all this kind of weird stuff at the end of the year, right? Which is totally not helpful for our sense of you know, how we feel about ourselves and our situations and whatever we call our lives, or my life story, right? So let's start off. When you're thinking about a situation when you felt really lonely, just a recent one, maybe it's even right in this moment for you that you're feeling lonely. How do you know that you feel lonely? Right? Well, when I was trying to figure that out while I was walking myself, you know, how do I know that I feel lonely? How did I know in the past, right? Because I've, especially early 2000s, I had a lot of therapy sessions, and I remember I used to always tell that story that I was so lonely as a child and stuff like that. And then when I was thinking back, I realized, hang on a minute. This is my perception now as an adult, thinking that I was a lonely child. But when I was a child, actually there's times when I was alone on the desk drawing. I used to love drawing. You remember when you stapled together a few pieces of paper and then you drew a little man a lot of times and he flicks through it and it makes it look like it's running? I used to love doing that. And even knowing this was a activity in solitude, really, right? I was alone. The way I told the story is that I was lonely. When I think back, it's like, hey, hang on, I didn't actually feel lonely while I was doing that. I interpret this now as lonely. And even now, like if you look at some more recent ones in adulthood, the times I felt lonely was actually not when I am alone at home. I actually quite enjoy being in solitude, doing things by myself most of the time, right? I often had a real big sense of loneliness when I'm actually amongst people, lots of people. Do you know what I mean? Even if it's people that you really enjoy being with sometimes, right? Maybe they're actually kind and loving people. It's different when especially around Christmas, when it's family members and stuff, and you feel like the toxicity and the energy is just so you want to stay out of, right? That it's a different sense there. But sometimes we feel lonely when we're with people. Why is that? And I really want you to feel into that now. How do you know that you're lonely in those moments? I was struggling coming up with something, right? Because it's not really a specific sensation in my body, a certain twist in my heart or whatever, right? A pain in my shoulder or something. It's not, there's nothing that specific. And I really explore what actually happens when I create that sense of loneliness, as I know I create, because I actually feel that I create that sense of loneliness by myself by telling myself stories that I don't fit in, that I am different, people don't like me, they think of me. So those kind of stories, maybe you can relate. Maybe you're doing things like that too, right? And to become really conscious about it. And sometimes for me it really helps to journal about it, or like today, you know, going for walks, being out in nature, and thinking about this, but also being fully aware of that thinking, it is the thoughts that I need, the stories that I'm telling myself in my mind. It's just in here, right? Those stories that I'm telling myself are actually creating that sense of loneliness, right? Because if I am in a group and I am really curious about other people and I enjoy their quirkiness, their differences, and I think it's really nice, or sometimes people have conversations and I feel like I don't have anything to say about it, right? So like if there's a group of women and they're all talking about makeup and hair extensions and stuff like that, it's like I don't, right? And it's not something that is of interest in particular to me right this moment. And I can quickly tell my story that I don't fit in, and that these women probably think kind of weird stuff about myself or how I am not right? They're my stories, right? I have zero evidence that they are really thinking that. Right. Have you ever checked in? Did you ever have a person in your life where you thought that they think a certain way about you in a perhaps negative way, and then you went and saw that person and checked in whether this is actually true, right? Because often it's not, right? and the more I can let go or just catch that, oh, my mind's telling me stories about that situation, whatever it is, a story. I can't even think of a good example right now in this moment, but perhaps you can think of one, and you can put it in the comments below, right? But what we do create themes in our life, right? And for me, that not fitting in, that being different, was a big theme throughout my whole life, right? And it's, I'm not saying that this isn't true or that there's no truth to it, because in a way, I was a child, I was developmentally slightly behind the other kids in the class, right? And as kids are really cruel at that time, and so I felt that, right? It was pointed out to me so many times, right? And so that there is some truth to this, but I am now, you know, an adult, you know, decades later, I'm still having this undercurrent that I am different. I am not fitting in. And it's almost a foundation or almost a necessity to the sense of loneliness, I feel. Because how else can I sit home alone on the desk and do an activity with no one around and actually feel really peaceful and happy and really enjoy that moment, right? Or perhaps you've been dancing by yourself at home alone, or playing an instrument, or whatever, or gardening, right? All by yourself, and you just loved every moment of it. And there was no thought about loneliness or that sense, right? Can you see that? Can you see how we create that sense, or we participate in that creation of that sense of loneliness? We have a direct influence on the intensity of that sense, and it is within our capacity to shift that or to change that. Right, that's just what I wanted to point out today. That was my morning walk. I thought I'm going to share it with you guys. So I'm curious what you guys are thinking about this. So